All right. So, welcome to another talk night with the Byte Club, and today we've got SQE here today to talk about game development and the sort. So, let's welcome them. If you guys would like to give an introduction to yourself.
Or Nihar, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. Hello. I am Nihar. I am one of the co-founders of SQE, and I am currently responsible for being the lead narrative designer as well as the interim lead programmer.
That was shorter than I expected. Okay. So my name is Nick. I am also a co-founder at SQE, S-Qubed Entertainment. Um, for this game, DC3 Wild Menace, I am working on the position of lead game designer, and I guess we can say interim art director as well. As most of us know, it's many hats when it comes to indie game dev, especially when it's your first title. So yeah, that's me.
Wonderful. How about you, El Nado? Am I saying
Well,
that right?
so my name is Miguel, and I'm one of the programmers. I'm a gameplay programmer at SQE, and well, later I'll explain a little bit more about what I'm doing with with this studio.
Yeah. All right. Sorry about that. Great to hear. From you guys there. I'm really excited to have you guys today. I know we've been talking quite a lot about this,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that kind of stuff. So, do you guys want to show your map before or after some of the
We
questions I had, or?
so before we dive into, I know you have a list of questions prepared. You always do. I, if it's okay with you, I'll share my screen. So we'll have sort of some images from the proof of concept that we have prepared, if that's okay.
Wonderful. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, awesome.
Okay,
Okay.
there we go.
Okay. So so that's basically um, images from a video from the proof of concept that we have. It's posted on our Steam page, and we used this video and images from the prototype that we have mostly for the Kickstarter campaign that we were supposed to launch a couple of months ago, but we decided to push that ahead to something like February, just because we weren't in a place where we weren't sure it would be successful. Anyways, that's how we came to using these images on this video particularly. This is by no means how the game's going to look, obviously, but yeah, at least it gives you a sense of what the eventual gameplay is going to be, and I think that's all we can hope for from a proof of concept slash prototype. Let me move my Discord so I'll be able to see if anyone's saying anything. Okay.
And yeah, I know we have a Q&A section, but if you guys have any questions in the audience about any of this kind of stuff, just feel free to shout it out or to like put it in the Talk Night chat, and we can get back to you right away. So yeah, that's really cool.
Oh,
um,
thank you.
yeah, I really like the comic book approach you took to the game, and I remember when you guys showed me this game at the start, and I was like, it's such an interesting idea to me. If you guys
Mhm.
want to talk about maybe what is the game exactly and what is DC3 Viral Menace?
Sure. So game design, I'll start. This this wasn't supposed to be our first project. Before we established SQE, we I had just finished my first semester at TFS. I was in the video game design and animation program, and Nihar absolutely despised programming at the time. he never thought that he would go back to it. He did a little bit of programming when for his undergrad, and that was before we moved to Canada, of course. This was in the States, and like him and programming, they're sort of like mortal enemies at the time. Now he's changed his perspective. I'm sure he'll tell you that story. Yeah, so we didn't have any programming experience. I had one semester at DFS, so obviously we thought we were ready to make a game, right? This was at the start of the pandemic. Literally, it had been a month since people were like, "Oh shit, this is going to happen. Everything's going to shut down," and so we were like, "Okay, so we have a little bit of an understanding of what it takes to make a game. Let's make a game." We were like, "We probably shouldn't do consoles or even PC. Let's do mobile games." So we decided to make a game where you as a player is in charge of killing viruses. At the time, we were like, that'll be cathartic because everyone's life is being cucked because of viruses. So, and that's how Dr. Capsule was born, right? So she was this persona. She was a physicist, a biologist. She was everything. She could also flip pancakes, according to Nihar, because he drew up her character at the time. And yeah, this prodigal pancake flipper, that was the title he had given her. And she would literally fight viruses by going inside the human body and clear up the infection and save lives, literally. We made a barely functioning prototype, but it was so inefficient that your cell phone would heat up after like 10 minutes of play, and 10 is pushing it. Also, at the time, given a little bit of thought, which was a good thing, we decided that it was unethical because even though our aim was to provide WHO slides and information in between levels, because I remember the virus was COVID was spreading out far and wide, and there was a lot of misinformation thanks to a certain president who shall not be named. And people were like drinking things they shouldn't be. People were still going out. There was no social distancing. And WHO was pleading everyone to like, hey, we have these slides on our website. Can you please share this information with everyone so we can try and get this infection under control? So that was the goal with DC3 at the time. It wasn't even Viral Menace, it was just DC3. So it was like, let's share WHO information and package it in a neat and fun game. But like a month down the line, there was like a mass of deaths, and it just felt unethical at the time. Add to the fact that all of our entire game was sort of like sellotaped and like bandaged, and it was like barely functioning. So it was just not the right time. So we gave up on the idea. And fast forward 4 years later, after Nihar had graduated, or he was in his final semester, that was when we finally established SQE, which had always been the goal for S-Qubed Entertainment to eventually be established. And this wasn't our first choice, DC3 Viral Menace. We actually made a barely functioning prototype of a top-down 3D RPG, ARPG. It was action ARPG that involved switching from a real world and a mirror world, and that was like Fey Mirror's Edge. It was a part of a different IP entirely. But like most indie developers, we had bitten off more than we could chew, and we had to shelf that. So Nihar was like, we may just have to go back to DC3 Wild Menace. And that's how we finally landed on sort of phoenixing this project, getting it back to life. It started off as a nice gesture to sort of control COVID, and it ended up being like our flagship project. Yeah, that's sort of the origin, and we started development October of last year.
Oh.
No, June of last year. Yeah. So we're like a year and 6 months into development.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's so cool,
Mm-hmm.
actually. Yeah, I honestly love that. I love the idea you guys have, and I honestly think it's definitely, it's not as like I think it's a great idea what you guys had originally, and I think I respect the idea that you guys like the decision to not put the
Hmm.
game out there for people, because I'm sure if you started putting out important information in a really bandaged and like sellotaped game, it's not really going to get any. It's actually probably going to spread the wrong message you want rather than a
Hmm.
good message. So I think that's
Yep.
definitely really important. That's really really cool. Yeah, I really like the idea. So when you guys originally pitched this idea, how? Because I'm assuming you guys have talked to some publishers about this, correct?
We have and we haven't. Okay. So we have reached out to 5 publishers, out of which one came back to us and gave us a plethora of like resources and information, but it was a no from them, and the other 4 didn't reply back. And
What the
this
hell?
was, yeah, this was 3 months,
A
Nihar?
month ago.
Oh, a month ago? That was just
Yeah.
no, like 2 months
Two
ago.
months ago.
Anyways, it's quite recent. And we were expecting that because a constant sort of characteristic of our journey this far is lack of information, like a lack of information and experience, right? As much as it's been fun developing a game, and I use the term fun very broadly because it's not always fun, it has also been this giant learning curve. And our pitch package was like 50 pages, which is normal because based on the little bit of digging up we did on the internet. But yeah, we sort of knew that we wouldn't hear back from most of them, right? And certain events transpired after sending out to those 5 publishers, and we decided to like stop on that, like reaching out to publishers, because one person, the one who gave us resources, he was like, your idea is amazing. His, I don't want to call it excuse, but his reasoning to sort of not go ahead with our title was that they were actually swamped at the time, they weren't taking on new projects. um but since our game is narrative based, and their studio, I believe it's Akupara Studio.
Mm-hmm.
It is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they make games based on from a narrative lens, so it was a really good fit for us. And like graciously, he replied to us. He was like, "Good idea, but we're not taking on any new clients right now. But here are a list of resources that you can use." And the first thing we noticed was like our budget was not good enough, you know. So that coupled with a few other things that we'll talk about later on, events, we were like, let's just hold off on reaching out to publishers. But we have gotten a fair bit of positive response from a few people who are experienced in the industry, and yeah, that's where we're at right now. Nothing solid from publishers yet.
Yeah, damn. It was if did you say 50-page pitch deck? But he did.
Yeah,
Yeah, he did just ask. What do they mean? What do they mean by the budget wasn't good enough?
it wasn't good enough because it didn't give them a clear enough, not them or him, it didn't give him a clear enough picture slash image slash story of what the game is supposed to cost. So he didn't specifically say that, but there was in one of the resources that he shared, there was an example budget, and there was a spreadsheet that you can use to calculate things that we hadn't included in our budget that was in our pitch package. So we sort of concluded from that that the budget wasn't not good enough is wrong terminology. It wasn't informative enough. It wasn't clear enough. Yeah.
It lacked the necessary information, basically,
Mm-hmm.
to make an informed decision.
It was incomplete.
Your pitch deck is wrong. Your budget is all wrong. You suck. uh,
We'd be fine with that as well, because that's still information that we can use, you know?
And start of the process to learn how to do this and to launch a game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just to like go back to what Harm is asking, right? Like the lack of timeline. So we had a very detailed timeline, right? And all of the milestones that we wanted to hit along the way, right? I think at a certain point, Nick and I were talking about this, and we were like, hey, this is really crunched. There. I think that should do it. Yeah. So we're sitting in the same room. So if I'm talking, he can't talk, unfortunately. So yeah, where was I? So we were talking about this, and our timeline was really crunched, right? And we were trying to get everything accomplished in like a year and a half, or so. Yeah. Um, so going back to it, we were like, hey, this isn't going to work out. Let's hold off on reaching out to more publishers, learn more about like what is a proper pipeline that we can follow, and then see how we can get this in a realistic time frame. Um, and that's where we are right now. You know, we're learning, we're slowly building up again, and getting a budget that more realistically, yeah, realistically tells the whole story.
Yeah, that's yeah, I think if you're like definitely dry pitching a game, I'm surprised to hear 50 slides. That's crazy. Um it's definitely a lot of slides, and for like what you guys are putting out there, I'm assuming you had whatever you're showing here, I'm assuming that's like, because you said about 3 months ago is when you heard a reply, right? So like I'm assuming most of this was done too. So like 50 pages was like crazy to me.
I think Nick might have like overshot that. You know, it's probably like 26 to 30.
It
Okay.
felt like 50 pages.
50 instead of 26. That is a that is an overshot and a half right there.
Okay, so it was a lot of text, which is fine. So Nihar and I are both writers, so we're fine with like a lot of words. But we've looked at proper pitch text after that, and ours was like a book, which it shouldn't be. Because there can be a point where you're giving publishers too much information and they don't give a shit about certain things, right? Um, so we've come to learn beyond that point that publishers want something. Obviously they want something in return for the money that they're giving you. I mean, this is supremely obvious, but when you're new and wide and doe-eyed and sort of innocent, you're like, oh, the publishers are just sitting there for for our benefit. Of course that's not true. They want something. And one of the things that we've heard people in the industry talk about is, if you can tailor your pitch to what the publisher specifically wants, you are much more likely to get a positive response. And once they've said it, we were like, well, duh. They are human beings. They work for a company that is most probably run by human beings, so they will have wants. So when you make this generic pitch that has everything under the sun about your game, the people are going the people responsible for reading these pitches, but they probably like read the first couple of pages and they're just going to throw it out because it's not specific to that publisher. Thankfully, Akupara Games got back to us because um, we we stated pretty clearly that many of our games, all of our games, um, will have a narrative attached to it. So yeah, a specificity with your pitch package is something that should definitely be considered when you're making one.
Yes, I think that's very important. Tailoring your pitch deck to the publishers in question definitely is an important note to take from that one. So I'm gonna kind of not really switch gears too much here, but I did want to ask something about your guys's company, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
all right. So I was wondering, what is, how is the, how do you guys go through the hiring process? How did you get the members that you have now, your staff members, and how did you guys kind of meet everyone? And I guess Miguel can also answer this question a little bit as well. Yeah, I'd just like to know that process.
Yeah, so well, I'll give a brief introduction to what SQE is before I dive into that, if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. So S-Qubed Entertainment, Nick and I have been like dreaming about like starting this studio for around 10 years at this point, you know. And It started off as a multimedia studio, and it still is. That's still the dream of it, where it will handle games, film, and media, and publications. You know, so that's the eventual dream of where the studio is going to be. And we've started off with games because um, it has a good like beginner step by step process of getting to a first published project. So that at the time felt like the easiest way to get started, and easiest and more immediate way to get started was games. So we founded the company in 2022, and we decided we knew what we wanted it to be, and so with that came the pillars. What does SQE stand for? So the pillars of SQE are that it is diverse, research based, and narrative driven, right? So I'll go into a little bit of that. So we wanted to focus on diversity in everything that we do. That ranges from our hiring to our projects that we tackle to everything in between. And that the reason for that is because a lot of studios out there, they kind of only show you part of the picture of diversity, right? Whenever you have a diverse character in a story, you only get like one part of it. It doesn't feel complete, and that's because it's not a fault of their own, but they are unable to tell those stories because they haven't lived those experiences, right? And that is something that is very common in games. It's common in media, film and media as well, right? And that is something we wanted to tackle. The next part is research driven. So research-based games, research-based media is very important because, as we spoke about earlier, there was a bunch of misinformation even during the pandemic, and that was because of people not realizing or knowing exactly how important uh, coronavirus was, right? And there were rallies by anti-vaxxers and people who didn't want to wear masks and stuff like that, and that was driven because people um, thought it was a joke, or thought it was like something that went against their freedoms and liberty. um, when you see an event like that, you kind of have to ask yourself, like, why is this happening? Why are people being this stubborn about something that has proven to show how deadly it is, right? And it all comes back to people just not um, being willing, or just not willing to appreciate the amount of research and knowledge that is out there. So with SQE, we wanted to focus on research-based projects and really dive into the deep end of like what is the story that we're trying to say or tell, and how is this related to our time, and also what is the history of this project, right? Um, where do these people that we're talking about come from? What is their history? Where does their culture come from, etc., etc.? And finally, narrative based, right? Stories have been a big part of both of our lives for as long as I can remember. And It's just something that resonates so heavily with us. I think even at like a young age, we used to play MMOs like Ragnarok Online, and that was MMOs have a way of like allowing you to be really open with the stories you create. They serve as an escape. And that escape can result in creations of fantasy and stuff like that, and those stories stay with you, right? They make sure that you feel safe um, wherever you go, and that's the kind of feeling that we wanted to leave people with, is that whenever you feel that you are alone or you feel anxious or any of those things, our games would be kind of like a safe space, a safe haven for anyone who's going through that. And stories are a great way to accomplish that.
That's really
Um,
sweet, actually.
thank you very much. So going back to your question, the current team at SQE, we met through our cohort. So I met Miguel and one of our other programmers, Asper, at GBC, and one of our artists is one of Nick's cohort, Alyssa, and we met them during our time at our individual alumni, right? And currently we are all working uh, in donations. Like we've given our time up for this project, because we're still looking for funding. But eventually, when we do have that backing, when we do have uh, some funds coming in, we'll be definitely making sure that people know. It'll be on either the SQE LinkedIn, or it'll be on our website as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I do really respect you guys for that because, to be honest with you, taking on a project or a group or a company, uh, and you receive no funding for it, the only thing you really get from it is, in the end, you just get the praise from your fellow colleagues. That's really what the only thing you get. But to be honest, I think that's really a good way of looking at it because not everything has to have a monetary value behind it. I do think that in some ways you should get paid for your work. Like if you're creating a whole game, I think that makes sense to get paid for it. But I do think that like doing this not just for the money is definitely a sign of a good person and, in my opinion, a good game developer. Now, I don't mean all the time, by the way. I don't mean like all the time you want to do that. I mean like someone who's willing to put in some extra time for their own project and their own ideas that they have. I think that's really, really cool.
Absolutely. And I have to agree, right? Like if you're coming into this industry or any industry that is artistically driven for the money, um, there are a lot of things that are easier to do, you know? Like if that is your only motivation is to make money, then you have a lot more choices available for you. Um, and I'll let Miguel speak on this because we were talking a few hours back, and he has quite a few things to say about this as well. But yeah, I agreed 100%. People should definitely be paid. Definitely. It like aches to not be able to do that for the people you're working with. And like it's the constant thing in both, and I think both of our minds, Nick and I, right? Like we have to get funding. We have to be able to support this. Like it's always there in the back of our mind, but we have to keep going with what we have in order to get there. So it's kind of like this tightrope that you're walking on, right? Because if you spend too long worrying about not being able to get funds, you won't spend enough time to actually get the funds, you know?
Yeah, I that's one of the largest, even if you like you can look at anything for that kind of matter. Like one of the best examples I like is this club, to be honest. All the staff that run this club with me and that stuff, I think that they all do it on their own time. Nothing, there's no payment. There is absolutely nothing that anyone else receives from this. And I think that's really respectable. All the help with setting up events, running the events, getting funding from the Student Association. I think that kind of stuff is really, that's dedication and passion right there. And I really, really respect
Exactly.
that.
Yeah,
To,
yeah.
to complement your comment, that's something that we were talking about the other day, and it's part of the wisdom that we have gotten on this journey. And it's that we are passionate about what we are doing, and we don't let uh, that those paychecks are going to overshadow our joy. The loud laughter and excitement and the satisfaction that we're getting when we see that the project is progressing, it's worthwhile. Money follows passion, not the other way around.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good way of looking at it. And one of my largest things I look at in people whenever I talk to them is passion. Like, how passionate do you feel about the topic you're discussing? If you're not that passionate, I would be surprised you're even still talking about this with me, unless you really like. You can have a negative passion or a positive passion. So if you really hate something and talk about it, that makes sense. But if you really like something and talk about it, that also makes sense. It's when you're in the middle that I definitely get a little confused when I talk to people that way. But hearing people have passions is really warming to hear, and I think that as long as you follow your passion, and now this is a very broad statement that I'm about to say, so just don't take this like take it all with a grain of salt. Like I think if you do follow your passion, you will find money in the end. It just takes some time and some dedication and a lot of hard work to get there, and I think that's really cool. But yeah, I really love S cubed and the values you stand for. I think diversity is something that we need. Uh, Creating games based on experiences in life is really important. So I don't know if you've had a bad nightmare and you want to share that with the world. It's a lot easier when you remember that nightmare you've had than just making a game based off of an idea of a nightmare that you saw on Reddit or something like that. It's very different.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think it also goes back to like the narrative design of it all. I'll jump into that when if you have time. But being honest with the types of stories that you're trying to tell leads to the best stories, you know? There's a sense of vulnerability there that you can't fake, right? Um, Creating a story for a project requires a sense of introspection and a kind of hard look at yourself and what you stand for, and really question why is it that you are writing the story? Why is it that this is important to you? I think it's important to remember why stories matter when you ask those questions as well.
Yes, I think that's actually I really love the idea of going through something and being able to show that off. I all the demos of games and that stuff I've made is all the majority of them they originated from a story. Yeah, it looks like Nick is actually on your thing, by the way. We can see his chair in the back. He's
Wow,
hacker
that's
man
so
over there.
cool.
I love that. Yes.
No worries. Thank you for joining.
Yes, thank you, Ari, for joining. Have a good one. Um, but yes, I do think doing some like making a game or an app, even just any idea that you have based on an experience, something that's really going to push you to finish that project. That's for sure. I think that kind of goes into the whole stories thing as well.
Hmm.
I think they kind of go hand in hand with each other, but I like being able to have another person to talk about my stuff with, and I'm sure as brothers you can kind of relate to that in that way. I definitely can too, with my brother and always talking to him about my game ideas that I've had. None of them's ever been finished in my life, but they're all quite fun to talk about sometimes, and he definitely puts some good points on for me and brings me back to reality with some of them.
It's yeah. It Nick and I don't think there's ever a time when we're not talking about game development, project development, anything related to SQE. Like we live and breathe SQE, you know. Um, I don't remember in the past 5 years, I'd say, like where we haven't like actively spoken about a project that we want to pursue. Like that, I cannot remember a time when we're talking that we've done that, and that's insane, right? Like that's I
I
think
That's
at
crazy.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that crazy. Five
At
years.
yeah, like
That's part of the commitment. You
that's
yeah.
part of the exactly right. Like, um, it's it's so ingrained in us that at this point it's just do or die. You know, it's like we either uh, do it or die trying at this point. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
as morbid as that is. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. Yes, I have lots of most projects that I end up running, as long as they're not like small projects that are like a 1 day type of thing or something like that, I usually will go to my brother and be like, "Hey, can you help me with this?" Or, "Hey, I'm going to tell you about this now, and you're going to listen to me because I'm not letting you not listen to me anymore." I do think that
That sounds like brothers to me.
yes, it's definitely nice having a second years in general as well. Even if it's not your brother, if it's just a friend, as long as you can kind of connect with them and they can pull you back down, basically saying, "Okay, shut up, your idea is bad. Everything about this is bad," or "This is a great idea, but I do think there's some changes you can make." Because if you go up to some random person, they might not give you that same, they might not know you as well and give you that same level of criticism that you might need for a game such as this, especially if you're going to release it to the world.
So
But yeah,
100% agree.
yes, it's a really cool game, and the whole, I think honestly the whole idea is beautiful. And you've got you can definitely, if you want to take the links by the way and share them in any of our channels, feel free to, because I'm sure people would love to hear about this as well. Um, yeah, it's really important if you guys want to.
I will leave that. We will send you the links and you can share them wherever you see fit because I don't because this seems like a whole infrastructure that's been set up and I don't want to ruin any of that. So that's
That sounds good. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
I will send all the links to you and
Thank you.
wherever yeah.
Yes. It's cool though. Okay. Yeah. Hold on, just pull up my little sheet here. um, so we've kind of talked about your guys' company, the game you're making, and what it felt like to find people to hire. And it looked like a lot of it was through mutuals, through maybe connections. um, how important do you guys think that was to bond with your classmates? And I guess this can go for Miguel too, because I'm sure it was really uh, cool to see someone that you've talked to before start this whole company and invite you or ask you to do some work for it.
Before Miguel sort of jumps in, I do want to point out that we have two team members. They're not obviously everyone is on a work whenever you can sort of a basis right now, but two of our members are actually not from our cohort. So our musician and our SFX person, um, we met them online, and it was with our musician. It was it was pretty. It was a huge coincidence. So I was taking an online course on concept art. I had graduated, and obviously that's not enough knowledge to get a job. So I was doing these bunch of courses, and this concept art course, it had a parallel course with the company that was providing it, and that was with music creation. So there was this forum where the artists would post their the stuff that they made for their art course, and then the musicians would put pieces of their music that they created while they were doing the music course. And there was this one post that was getting so many hits, and I was like, let's check it out. And that was so our musician's name is Ben Birkenbosch. He is from the Netherlands, and it was his piece on that forum, and I heard, and I fell in love instantly. And after that, I started following all of his YouTube channels. And like, I had him in the back of my mind. I was like, eventually we'll need musicians who'd want to work with us at SQE because, well, music, one of the cornerstones of any media that you want to share, except for print media, I guess, but I'm sure people will find a way of incorporating that as well. Anyways, fast forward to the first demo that we were making, the top-down ARPG. I was like, let's just reach out to him. Let's see if I mean, worst case scenario, he completely ignores us. So I sent him an email on his, I believe it was posted on one of his YouTube pages, and he replied, and I was so surprised. I was like, okay, this person has quite a following. He's clearly not a beginner because his music is brilliant, and he replied, and he loved our sort of focus on narration as a lens for video games or for any of the products that we do, and he is interested in how narrative elements sort of impact music as well. So he was like, yeah, I'd love to work with you. um, he His work doesn't come entirely free, so there are certain things that you have to pay for, of course, and that's understood, right? Like, this person is already making music for quite a few at quite a few places. So he was like, I'll give you a couple of tracks, and they were just so brilliant. And then we told him, like, hey, this project is on a hold. We spoke to him about DC3 Wild Menace, and he loved that idea as well. And now he's given us four tracks for DC3 Wild Menace, and it's just absolutely brilliant. And the cool thing is that he actually has he was one of his mentors is a really big musician. Yeah, I didn't remember his name.
Oliver Arnolds.
Oliver Arnold. I always forget his name.
OLAFUR.
So yeah, this fellow, Oliver Arnold's amazing musician, and he was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm like being mentored by this person." He just mentioned that like as a by the way kind of a thing, and Nihar and I were like floored, like okay. And he was like, "By the way, I can mention our game to him whenever you're ready." And it was like so mind blowing that this random connection that we made off of a random art course that I took online, and this person knows Oliver Arnold, and Nihar and I love this guy. His piano pieces are brilliant. So yeah, that's how we met our musician, and our SFX person, Khan Salman. He is, I forget where he's from. He's from the Turkey. Yes, he's based in Turkey, and we have a form on our website that we never expected people to use. But he was like, "Hey, I found your website. I have no idea how we found our website because we haven't advertised that shit." And he was like, "Do you guys need anyone in SFX or music?" Because he does both. And we were like, "We have a musician." And like we were looking over his email, and we were like, but he was so passionate, and he was genuinely excited for the idea. So you're like, let's just speak with him. So we scheduled a call, and he was like, that's fine, I don't have to do the music. I'd love to work with whichever musician you have, but let me do SFX with you. And we were like, we spoke about how financially viable it was, etc. And at that time when we were talking about money, because you will have to speak about money when you're potentially talking to people who would join your company. I was just feeling so sad because here was this person, and again, this guy has industry experience. um, he's doing something he loves, and the sad part was we are trying to do something we love, but we can't pay him for it. And I guess that's just the situation with indie game dev in the start. Our industry is new. The video game industry is new, even though it drives so much money. It's still a slightly new industry, so I guess it's understandable that newer indie studios don't have that cash flow. But it was a sad thing that someone this experienced, someone this excited, would be working for us on a hope that eventually we'll be able to pay him. But yeah, that's how we met our SFX fella. He sent us a form, and it's just these people we've never met, and to me that was magical to meet someone who sort of thinks on the same wavelengths as you, um, reach out of nowhere and then just connect like that. So yeah, that was fantastic. Just wanted to add
Well,
that. And now
in
Miguel
my
can speak.
in my case, I have to emphasize that knowing Nihar, which is a person that I have to recognize his commitment to our shared goals. That provide me a clear indication that the agreement to do this project, it's going to be potential. It will be beneficial to us, and after those 3 years of working with consistently lazy peers, I came to the realizations that I needed to seize this opportunity, and it's part of the journey. And I had a clear idea of what I wanted, and this opportunity came to me, and I said no, I gotta do it. And I know how he works very hard, and that gave me the peace in my mind that I'll have a peer that is going to help me when I need it, and we're going to push this project forward, even though we have rainy days, or it's gonna be. I know that it's gonna be really tough, but here I am, giving my 100%, and I'm glad that we have done all the progress that we have done with this game.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's just one. I think a big part of this is one simple connection can lead you down a whole road of just experiences, um, and excitement. Really, I think there's a lot of, like, I've met people who have connections to I don't even know where. Like, um, actually, one of the funniest connections I had was that my landlord knew my dad from the industry, and that was the weirdest thing to me. So
No.
yeah, so I was like, okay, that's a little interesting. But like, just it's those random connections that you have with other people that lead to even more connections, which I think is pretty crazy and actually really cool. And I think meeting people and at least getting to know them a little bit is always really nice to do.
Six
Well, and
degrees.
having the pleasure to work with him gave me an idea that what it's like to collaborate with a person, and give this 100% to a single thing, which is DC3.
Yeah, and
Miguel is really, really very kind, I have to say.
yes.
Um, it's the idea of like 6 degrees of separation. Like you're at any given point, you're just 6 degrees away from the next person that could possibly change your life, you know. Um, yeah, I was really lucky to meet both Miguel and Asper at the time that I met them, because Nick and we were discussing, because this is my focus and specialty professionally is in writing, right? And but I was at the time also and still am to a certain degree still handling programming. Um, and given the scope of the project, we knew that we wouldn't be able to continue it in the time scale that we wanted to, with just me programming and writing the story for it, you know. So we knew that we had to reach out, and Miguel and Asper seemed like the best fit, you know, because they both were so passionate about, like, and you can hear it, right, like, when Miguel talks about it. They're both so passionate about what they do, and what they believe in, and it just shows, you know, when you're passionate about something that you love to do, you will rise to the top of whatever field you're following.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's so interesting to hear all of this. Because I think, especially as someone who's starting out in the industry and not even just in the game development industry. I think it's just any industry. Like I want to go into the just not even the game development industry. I just want to be in like a programming industry in general. I think just having one person that you can talk to, you'll go up in that company. Like as long as you keep meeting people, you keep being nice, and you keep and there's a point where you obviously, I think there's common sense there. Like some people aren't going to be great to talk to, and that's okay. That happens. But I do think that just giving your all to the projects you're given and making connections with people, even in school. There's this thing at George Brown called the George Brown Game Jam, which is run every year. And I'm pretty sure it's run by a guy named Dave Whiffen, if I'm not correct. If I'm correct. Uh, but basically, there's about 5 or 6 or 7 uh, post-grad design students who come in every year, and make they basically have this pitch idea for a game, and then they bring on developers and artists from the game programming and art course, and designers from game design, whatever program that has game in it. They bring people to, and it's usually like a second or third year. I was lucky enough to actually try it in my first year. But I think that experience, I met so many people through that who kind of introduced me to more people, and they at the end of the year they actually usually compete in level up as well. You get to go there, meet a bunch of new developers, and that's really cool, especially just from a game jam that our school is doing, for fun. Like maybe the game wasn't the greatest, but the connections were amazing. So I think that was
Yeah.
definitely really important.
Yeah, for sure. And for anyone who's listening and watches this recording, right? Um, I'd just like to leave this out there. Like, be open to collaboration. Uh, Thank you so much, Tali. Um, be open to collaboration. Um, it's it's a little bit scary when you're starting out. Just like step out of your comfort zone. But there are some really wonderful people out there who want to just make good projects. Who want to mm, be good developers and make something that is uh, worth making. And you'll find your people. Yeah, the qualities that you portray in the world kind of attract the same kind of people to you. So be open.
Yes, that's definitely a good quote to go by there. But yeah, so we've talked about your company for quite a bit, different connections, how like how connections feel in the industry, and I think that kind of definitely explained a lot of what you should be thinking of when you go into the industry, connections, and I think that's everyone I've talked to, I've kind of gotten something similar from people where connections is really important, having a portfolio is really important, and that kind of stuff. So, how did you guys, and I'm sure at some point, I don't know, maybe with this game or another game or another project in general, how could you guys deal with burnout, and how did you guys keep motivation while working on SQE? And this goes for all three of you, by the way, so all you guys can feel free to answer.
All right. I'll take the lead on this because I have like a proper section for burnout. Okay, great. um, okay. I'll describe what burnout feels like. It's a very first of all, burnout sucks. All right. It's an extremely and it sucks is a very like vanilla term for it. Um, it's an extremely visceral feeling when you feel burnout. It's almost like your body wants to reject the work you're doing, and it feels like you want to throw up, you know, just by being in the space of wherever your work is, right? Like you will want to punch your screen at a certain point when you're going through burnout. Um, and a good remedy for that is stepping away. Step away and just take breaks. For the love of everything that is good, take a break. It will not delay your play a game. Do the thing that you possibly entered game dev for.
True. Play a game.
Play a game.
Play a game.
Take breaks. It's important. And the reason why it's important is because when you're going through burnout, you are not giving your 100% to the game you're developing, right? You see it as a kind of like a you're doing a disservice, right? And when you don't develop to the best possible in the best possible way, you're only shooting yourself in the foot by delaying the development further. Yeah, I'll, I'll let Nick or Miguel take over. But yeah, that's the thing. It sucks. Take breaks. Definitely take breaks.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry.
So Nihar mostly covered everything that needs to be said about burnout. I'll just add this. Don't take breaks when you reach burnout. Once you sort of know what it feels like, take breaks before you hit burnout. Because if you're already there where you're getting shivers just looking, and like not shivers of delight but shivers of disgust looking at your screen, you're in burnout. And then if you take a break there, your breaks are going to be unusually long, so you'll just end up pushing development further. So take breaks before you reach that point. Take them consistently, make it part of your schedule in breaks, like do it proactively. Yeah, that's it. Just don't wait till you're disgusted by your game, because then you'll binge enjoyment, which is not a bad thing. You do what you got to do. But if we sort of aim to be consistent with game development, we should also aim to be consistent with taking care of our mental health. Getting in exercise, eating a healthy diet. You don't have to wait to become unhealthy to start getting healthy, is what I'm trying to say. And this is the health freak in me coming out, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the way how I overcome the situation, that situation. What I often do is I'll go outside, take a walk, breathe some fresh air, work out, take a long shower, and then just tackle this game. That's as simple as that.
Yeah, I
And
mean, yeah.
prior to that, a little bit of gaming, and then I'm done. I'm ready for it.
I think, yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of game developers that I talk to overlook is the value of just playing a game. Like, something in my first year that I really didn't do as much was just play a game, experience that game. So, especially if I'm having trouble with something, my issue is that whenever I get stuck in a problem, I start to freak out about that problem, and it becomes a really big problem, especially if it's like an app that I'm making right now. If I have a problem with, I don't know, setting up the Google Maps API key for that, I start freaking out there, and I'm like, okay, pause. I'm gonna go play a game. I don't know, walk around, get some food. I kind of check up on myself as well, make sure that I am feeling good all around physically as well. Do I need a walk? Do I need a drink? Do I need food at all? What do I have for the rest of the day? And I kind of just re-stabilize myself there and I guess the best word for it would be to reset myself in that way. Give myself an hour where I just take some time, reset, and then I can go back, finish that. Usually I'll get the answer. I remember one time I had a problem with my program, and all I did was jump into bed, sit there for like an hour, just mumbling to myself like an insane person. And yeah, and I had like all my rubber duckies by me too. The rubber ducky method, something we talked about last week a lot. Just about talking to your rubber ducky and asking it questions. I think I did that for an hour, and then I went, "Yep, okay, I know the problem now." Got back on my computer at 4 in the morning and went, I solved it. I may be super tired in the morning, but I solved it." Yeah, But yeah, I do think that like those are all really good points, and I do think that everyone sort of deals with it differently. But the points that you guys give are definitely really similar to a lot of people, which I think is really good, knowing that we're all human. We have very similar uh, ways to deal with things. So another question I had was when you guys started. We can go from either when you guys started SQE, when you guys formulated the idea for a game in general, or just when you guys were in school. What internships or competitions or things like that did you guys have, or would you guys recommend to people nowadays if they're going into something like game development?
Every single uh, game jam you see, anything that gives you uh, time to learn how to make a game, how to be better at it, everything, I would say.
Yeah. Miguel had it spot on, right? Like, be open to any opportunity that comes your way. From a studio perspective, we didn't at the time have time to pursue different internships, you know? Like, it was SQE all the way through. It The first few months were just figuring out what it means to own a studio, you know, just like what is the legal stuff that's required, what is the production stuff, where do we go if we want to find talent, you know? So for us, for Nick and I, it was basically just SQE. Okay, now it's time to learn the process of owning a studio. And that process, if you're not pursuing ever starting a studio of your own, and if you're just graduating or you are still in school, use that time that you have outside of school to pursue any internships or any game jams. There are hundreds, I would imagine, hundreds of them that take place every year. Um, Participate, test your skills as, say, a programmer, an artist. Gather a bunch of your friends, make a small demo or a small proof of concept. You never know where that game is going to end up. I think to in the second night of talks, we saw that one of the game jam games became a full-fledged game on mobile, right? So that there's that, right? Like, you never know where your demo is going to go.
Yeah, sorry, my mic was on mute. Yeah, I think that just in general, finding things was definitely one of the largest challenges for a lot of people that I know. Finding anything, but the best thing that I've always been told and I've seen people do to get jobs is do as much as you can. Get those game jams in. It doesn't matter how good or bad they are. You have something to put on a portfolio now. You have a piece. Like, one of my friends just made his website for his third year in game art. He has an amazing portfolio with a lot of information and a lot of these really cool 3D models and dioramas that is made. And that's going to help someone get a job through that. Like, you see that website and you're like, all right, they've already made a website for this. It's not just, and of course, it's an art station's cool and that stuff, but you see this website now and you're like, they're dedicated, first of all, to like what they want. They've got all these different tabs up. They know how to design a website. Let's say, for example, I'm going to take my friend as an example. He has 3D models all over. He knows how to 3D model. And all these projects that he's done both inside and outside of school. I think that definitely takes precedence over someone who doesn't have all those and just has the things they graduated from school with.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Everyone who graduates from a program is going to end up with about the same things, you know? So how are you going to find a way to stick out? That's the question you should always be asking. Because looking at it from someone who would be looking for talent, right? Say you are put yourself in put yourself in a studio head's shoes, right? You are looking for talent. Who are you going to be drawn to more? Someone who has put in the effort and put out a website that is neat and tidy and showcases their talents to the T, or someone who has just sent you their resume. Like the amount of effort that person one uh, put in is a clear indication of the effort that they are going to put if you hire them, right? So do whatever it takes for you to stand out. And even if you don't go for any game jams, right? Make prototypes for programmers out there. Make prototypes that you can complete, right? If you see that you like a skill in a game that you want to try to recreate, do that, you know? Show people that you know what you're talking about rather than just writing it. I think, yeah, I'll leave it there.
I'll say my piece about this, keeping in mind that this is our biggest weakness as SQE, or as all of us, most of us at SQE, we haven't had proper paying jobs in the industry. So anything that I say will come from a place of not having that experience, right? So Nihar and I worked for a studio. I myself worked for that studio for a period of 8 months, Nihar for 6. Um, it was an unpaid job. Um, and the thing that we took away from that, and they're still hiring on LinkedIn, the positions are still unpaid. The game has been in development for 2 decades now, which should tell you a lot. But when I accepted that position, one, I was a fresh graduate, so I was desperate. So at that point, when you freshly graduated, I had a little bit of portfolio. I had done a few things in excess from what we had done in the program. So my portfolio wasn't the best, but it was decent enough. So I took the job. It was unpaid, but I did get experience. And looking back, it was a horrible thing to happen to anyone who is new to the industry. Your work gets used for a game, but it's not paid for. And you end up leaving the position thinking to yourself, well, at least I got the experience. Unfortunately, I'm going to say, if that is the position that you're in, roll with it. Just take that experience. Retain everything that you learned about the pipeline, about how developing a game feels like, what are how are the people who are leading, how do they interact with you, how would you interact with people whom you will eventually lead. Take all of those lessons. You are allowed to feel bad about the fact that you were probably taken advantage of if you are in this situation, but then just take whatever experience you can and just go ahead. From my cohort at TFS, I would say 80% of the people still haven't gotten proper jobs in the industry, and that's just what the situation is now. And I'm not saying that people who do get jobs are incredibly lucky. No, their portfolios are just stronger, or they're just exceptional students, and maybe there's a bit of luck in that, maybe. But that doesn't happen to everyone, and you have to be ready to accept that you may not get a job immediately after graduating. It's a sad reality of game dev right now. And it's even worse, like if you spend time on LinkedIn, every day a new studio, not a new studio, but a AAA studio crops up in the news. Oh, they just laid off 1,000 people, 100 people, 500 people. So even people with experience are losing jobs, and that's just where we are at right now, which is why I always say every chance I get, indie studios are the future for game dev, because we will eventually create more jobs than AAA studios. that will be more meaningful. And we'll also create diversity in the products that are created anyways. So yeah, bottom line, get experience from any way possible and then just move on. It doesn't have to be a paid position, unfortunately. If it is, that's amazing. But yeah, get every ounce of experience that you can, improve your portfolio, and then apply for jobs that pay as well. Yeah, it's
Yes.
sad, but what are you gonna do? You know.
I mean,
Unionize.
sorry, you can go ahead. That's my bad.
No, I was just answering. We're gonna unionize.
Yeah, unionize. um, but yes, I think that definitely you should. There's work that you shouldn't be paid for, and I think not a lot of people know of that difference between them for sure. Like if you're a college student, I'm sorry, but like chances are you probably won't be paid if you're a new year one college student that just got into the industry and knows like basic, I don't know, for example, Unity, basic C sharp skills, like maybe half of the API for Unity, which is still a lot, but still, you don't have anything to show for your skills. You don't have anything that's kind of putting yourself out there and saying, hey, I make work that deserves to be paid for, instead of, um, I don't have any work, but trust me, I'm good, and just pay me. How'd that?
It's also like taking the weight off your employer, right? Like people want to pay you, right? It's not. I mean, it's like it's not that they're hiding the money away. It's that they want to pay you, but they also want to make sure that you'll be able to get the job done without a lot of hand holding. You know, um, unfortunately, the studio that we worked on had a was questionable about everything, but like legitimate studios, they want people who are able to stand their ground and put in the hours without the need for training. You know, that's where a lot of employees would shy away. Is like, I don't want to train someone new for the first 6 months and then have them just like dip out, at the end of it. It's like, hey, this is not for me, goodbye. So they've just wasted 6 months worth of pay for someone who's not even gonna stick around. Um, it's a risk both ways.
Yeah, for sure. It's a risk both ways. I think that's something that not a lot of people see. Or sorry, not a lot of people end up seeing. There's also the other side of it. As much as you can start saying, let's unionize, let's do all this stuff, there's another side of it as well, that actually is very important. And that's something that my dad always used to tell me that's very important. Make sure to look at both sides of the coin before you flip it. Yeah. Um, so we're gonna quickly. I have a question that got asked before someone left. I just saw the message now. Um, they asked. Let's see here. It was from Kaylern. She said, "You guys were talking about making a game a safe space for everyone if they feel uncomfortable in real life. How would they warn or prevent people from developing an addiction and actually have specialized help in cases, since it's a very popular problem for people who don't have a safe space other than games?" I can give you guys a second.
I'm going to need to read that.
Yeah, here, I'll quickly I'll quickly send you guys the message here. I'll put it into chat for you guys to see it. So you guys can see that.
Yes. Making a game a safe space for everyone if they feel uncomfortable in real life. How would they warn, prevent people from developing an addiction and actually have specialized help in cases, since it's a very popular problem for people who don't have a safe space other than games? Ooh, this is something that Nihar can talk about, because one of his safe spaces is also something that he claims is very addicting for him. And there is no solution. And I kind of just outed him about it, and I do feel bad in retrospect, but I feel like he should talk about it.
Uh,
Wait, before you jump in, I was there myself. So when this is just my personal experience, I don't think I have enough knowledge to talk about it from broader perspective. But it's an excellent point. safe spaces, by virtue of them making us feel safe, we don't want to leave those spaces because then we'd be unsafe. I was bullied a lot when I was in school, so MMOs, books, the world of fiction, that was my safe space because no one was mean to me there. But that also meant that I was addicted to MMOs. The way you sort of try and leave that space, how did I do that? Well, I had no choice because my mom was very strict. Um, and but if no one is there to drag you out of that place, it would fall on the developer's shoulders to sort of give you information about the dangers of addiction. So let's talk about gaming addiction. From a developer's perspective, there are two things that I can immediately think about. One of them would be unfun. The unfun thing is have some sort of an energy system, but everyone despises that. So I don't know if that's the best thing. The other thing you can do is sort of like a soft solution, wherein you can't force someone to quit the game that they're playing, but you can notify them like, hey, you've been playing for 6 hours straight. Your character has been moving for 6 hours straight, which means none of that time was AFK. Do you want to take a water break? Do you want to like use bio? Do you want to like take a nap, rest your eyes, look at nature or something? You could do that. I think many a times, if it is not straight up addiction that is life threatening, the person will probably take heed of that message. They'll be like, oh shit, yeah, it has been 6 hours. Let me grab a snack. Let me like at least look outside my window, take a whiff of fresh air. As for hardcore addiction, I that is heavy psychology, and it would be detrimental for game developers to think about solutions to that sort of addiction without having the personnel on their team to come up with those solutions. And now Nihar will address the rest of or his sort of situation.
Yeah. So addiction sucks. It's how to put it? I think there's an episode in West Wing where they talk about uh, it's a political drama that goes over the American governance. You know how the presidential election happens, like how all of the things that happen in the American government, right? West Wing, by Aaron Sorkin, right? They talk about um, addiction really really well. And in one of the episodes, one of the characters talks about his addiction to alcohol, right? And um, his simple way of putting it is, how can you not? When he sees a glass of alcohol, his response to that is, how can you just look at it and not drink it, right? And that stuck with me. Right, that is the same kind of feeling that runs through my head whenever I see a game that I am addicted to, and I'm like, but how can you not play it, right? And there are quite a lot of psychological motivators for me to be in that position, and I've come to learn that about myself. Um, and it's important to take a step back and learn why it is that you are chasing this, right? What exactly do you want from it? Why exactly are you addicted to this? And the reasons that for myself that I've learned is that I seek escape when I feel anxious, right? Um, it's whenever I feel anxious, or whenever I feel threatened psychologically or mentally or any of that sort, like when I feel overwhelmed, I run to games as an escape, right? And the way I kind of break that cycle, the way I break that cycle is to establish a negative feedback loop. Um, So that means that when you wait for him to finish typing. Okay. Yeah. A negative feedback loop, right? So I'll take my addiction for example, League of Legends, right? Like
League of
definitely addicted
Legends.
to that. Yeah, definitely addicted to that game, right? And Nick would like to disagree at certain times. Like, how can you be addicted to that? Like, I assure you, I am addicted. Um, right. So the way I break out of that loop, because addiction feels like a loop, right? You can't just stop at one. You have to keep going. You have to keep going. You have to keep going. And the more you win, the more successful you feel, the more of that dopamine hit that you get, the more you feel the more you feel um, inspired to carry on, you know? So a way to break out of that loop is just lose, right? Get that negative feedback going. It's like, oh, this sucks. I hate losing. So your desire to lose overshadows your motivation to play, right? Now that's a little bit difficult to do in an MMO, or games that don't necessarily have a PvP or a win loss kind of a situation going for them. But even in MMOs, if you're a PvP person, lose your matches. Don't do it on purpose. Don't be a dick about it. But like, try to get out of that dopamine hit. Um, and I agree. Like it's a very strange place for a game developer to be because games can be very addictive, right? And I don't think there's any game developer out there who wants to make their players addicted to the point where they have nothing else and only the game, unless we're talking about some Black Mirror shit, you know. Um, so so as game developers, if you have the personnel to kind of like talk about this with you and your team, definitely take their advice on it. And if you don't, um, if you know that this game doesn't do or doesn't have the resources to do such a thing, you as the person addicted and those in your closest vicinity, take up the responsibility. Be there for the person who is addicted. Um, make sure that they're heard, make sure that like what they're going through is seen and being like, hey, I'm here for you. You don't have to worry. You don't have to uh, do this to yourself. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that's
that's it.
really important. And I really love the way you explained addiction in general because a lot of people get it messed up and a lot of people use the word very commonly. Like you can go, "Oh my god, guys, I'm so addicted to this game right now." It's like you can't be addicted right now. You're addicted to a game and you're not just addicted at this moment, you're addicted over the span of a period of time. So a lot of people used to tell me, and I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong, but I have, and people say I have an addiction to Mountain Dew, soda drink for people who don't know. Um, I fucking love Mountain Dew, but it's not like I need it in my daily life to keep going every single day. Or else I'll suffer the consequences. Like I've gone days without it, and it's been fine. And I think that's what breaks an addiction: going a couple days without it and realizing, sure, I still might think that, like, I want it, but I'm not thinking I need it all the time. As you can see, I haven't had it every day. And I do think a lot of people use that word way too often, and I really do think that kind of sucks for a lot of people. Like, if it's in a joking way and you're with people that know it's a joke, it's different. But when you're in a serious environment and you start making those accusations, that's when people who actually have addictions start to feel um, more validated and their addiction is okay to have, which isn't the best thing to be saying to people or to make people believe in that way.
Yeah, yeah. It's what you just said, right? Like, don't validate someone's addiction. It's very important, because that's just going to motivate them to be more addicted. It's like, yeah, this is okay. He said it. Because then you're what you're doing is just shirking off the blame, right? You're like, he said it was okay, therefore I'm doing it. I'm fine. Um, Clearly you're not.
Yeah, it's it's definitely a slippery slope to talk about as well because everyone's opinion on it differs completely. But I think the main point is definitely don't validate someone's addiction, but also don't shy away from trying to help them and just be with them, basically. Like, you can't really help someone with an addiction, I guess. It's really, they have to do the work. But you can support them, you can be there for them. That's about it. And like, I know that definitely for sure. I wouldn't say that I had an addiction, but I would say I was very much hooked on Mountain Dew for the longest time when I was younger. To the point where I'd have one every one or two, like probably two or three a day, when I was a lot younger. And my family never said that, like, they wouldn't just go, "You can't have it anymore. Screw you. It's all over." Like, they would still support me in that endeavor. Like, they would, like, I'd get it sometimes. It's just that I wouldn't get it as often anymore. And this is when, like, I just got my debit card and I was so, like, over the moon about it for the first time. I was like, I'm gonna go buy everything in the store now. um, yeah, have a good one, Tam.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for coming. So I think, yeah, buy everything in the store. You look at the funny colors at the store and you go, ooh, I need to buy everything now. Um, yeah, but yeah, that's all the questions I really had, to be honest with you. If you guys have anything else you want to say, I know you guys had a map you wanted to look at. Yeah.
So the map would probably require a lot more participants, but if anyone has specific questions, we can answer them now.
Sure, yeah.
I did have a few general tips that I wanted to sort of share. But if people are typing out questions, I'll sort of go over them right now.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, just start typing them in, and when when you guys see them, you can just respond to them. I can also notify you guys if a question comes in if you're talking at all. That's cool too. Yeah. I think we're okay for now for questions. I would probably, just start your tips and yeah.
Okay, so this is something that I know for a fact that Fernando makes sure that all of his students know about. This one is the why are you making the game. So I do want to reiterate on the importance of that. Definitely know why you're making the game. And the reason for the why, I'm sure he's addressed it, but I feel like it's forgotten many times because the why will dictate the what. So if people are making a game for their portfolio, that game is going to be, the scope of that game and that game is going to be vastly different than the game that you're making for your indie studio or a game that you're making as a hobbyist, right? Because when you make a game for your portfolio, you are expecting studios to look at what you've made and they'll break it apart on a surface level. They'll probably just look at the code. Oh, the code's good. Oh, this person has done XYZ things that are actually beyond what they teach in school. Boom, let's hire this person. That's probably what will happen. That's what the portfolio is for. It's for you to show off your skills, sort of set yourself apart from the competition and get you that job. But your first title as an indie studio is a completely different ball game. This is something that you have to plan for, right from the concepting phase to the prototype and all the way to development and post development as well if you have live ops, etc. So sort of planning that out is so different and it's so much more involved than just getting a title for your portfolio. A hobbyist is somewhere in the middle where you possibly want to show off your title, maybe start networking or something, but you don't expect to make money. So the hobbyist making a game is somewhere in the middle. You don't exactly know if they want something in return, could just be for the sake of making a game. So those are sort of the three the wide spectrum of why you're making a game. And the other aspect of why you're making a game is what is it doing for you personally. So if you're making an indie game, if you're making a game for your indie studio, make it as personal as you can. And that's how that game is going to stand out. So one of the things that we've recently learned is that when you approach a publisher, they're going to talk about, or they're going to ask you what problem your game is solving, right? Can you imagine that? Like, as a novice, when I would think about a budget or a pitch package, I would think about the dry details of the game. This is XYZ genre. These are our projections. This is how much I am looking to make from my game if I'm working solo. Imagine that. But a publisher is actually intending to solve a problem, any problem that can be anything under the sun, because that's how the publisher is going to find an audience for the game. And the publisher wants to make money, so they have to find an audience. You can't find an audience if there is no problem being solved, right? So when you make a studio, or when you make a game for your indie studio, think of it as solving a problem. Is there a gap in the industry that you're fulfilling? Is there a psychological or a metaphysical or some emotional problem or emotional distress that you're trying to address with your title? And this is where DC3 falls in. And when you make it personal, you are going to be able to address that problem a lot easier, as opposed to finding a random problem on the internet and then trying to look for a solution for it. Which is why it's sort of so important for your first title, at least, where you're relying on authenticity, and that's coming from your thoughts and your experiences. You're relying on all of that to have your project stand out, because you don't have the experience to make something that you haven't experienced yourself and make it shiny or good enough or AAA enough to have it shine enough and then sell copies. So make it very, very personal as your first title. And also keep the scope small. Doesn't matter how much experience you've had before your first game. When you eventually reach publishers, reach the point where you're reaching out for publishers, if you have already released a game and it is sold, I don't know, even 100 copies, that means the publisher knows that you're aware of what it takes to lead a studio, to run a project from beginning to end. So, make a cell phone game with 100 levels. Don't start off with 1,000 level multiplayer game that needs live ops and has like 500 skills and like 10 different skill trees. That's ridiculous. That shouldn't be your first game. Keep it small. Keep the IP original and enticing. Sell it, and then you're much more likely to get publishers for your next title. And finally, make mistakes. I love this. Because it sounds so silly, like, right? You're actually asking people to make mistakes, but why? What made me write that? Okay, so new business owners, new indie studio, but Nihar and I aren't new to sort of the learning process. And over the past 2 years, we've come to realize that the lessons that we learned by making mistakes are the ones that have really helped us grow the most. And it's the best way of learning a lesson, because those mistakes cost us something. It can be real money or it can be time. And you'll remember those lessons for the longest time. If someone tells you something and it's a new lesson, yeah, that's good. You haven't experienced it, so you're less likely to remember it. So the best way to sort of get good at making a game is by making mistakes, and you only make mistakes when you keep trying. So definitely keep working on your game, keep improving it, make those mistakes and learn from those mistakes, and that'll teach you lessons that'll sort of stay with you for your second title and your third title. Yeah. If anything, remember that. Make mistakes and you'll be fine.
Yes, that's definitely a huge and very important lesson to be learned there. I can't tell you the amount of times I've talked to people that's helped mentor me and steer me in the right direction. and they've gone, make mistakes. Doesn't matter what I'm doing. It doesn't. I could be in the business field for all I know. Make mistakes. The one field you really don't want to be making mistakes in is probably the medical field. To be honest with you, there. I don't know. Maybe work like during surgery is not the great time to make mistakes. So there is times where you probably shouldn't be making mistakes. But like at the same time, when you have the ability to make mistakes, just don't care. Make them. It happens. Just not during surgery, please.
That's fair. That's fair.
I definitely would not like that if. Oops, scalpel in me. Uh-oh. Okay, I gotta live with that now. Yes. But yeah, there's some very important rules and tips in there. Again, if anyone in the audience didn't catch all of that, or if people had to leave, we have this all recorded, and I'm going to be posting this on YouTube later, and possibly other streaming services, so that everyone can kind of take a listen wherever they feel. I do think that these are very important. And by the way, thank you guys for also coming on today. I think this is very important to have these talks, especially with a person that with two people that own their company, someone that's working for the company. Just having someone in every little pocket of information is very important. Um, uh, do I tell? I mean, I should probably do that. That actually might be a good idea, but your guys' names usually aren't shown unless you type something in the chat and respond. That's probably a good idea. I'm sorry I didn't address that beforehand. I that completely flew my mind over. Um, but yes, as long as you guys are okay with the recording, um, I don't know if I mentioned it this time, but I know in the past I think I might have mentioned it was recorded, but I will make sure to do that next time. So thank you for reminding me there. If any of you guys have a problem with that, just DM me. That's okay. But yeah, thank you guys for coming on. And I don't know if you guys have any last things you want to say, any other points you've got here.
Make mistakes. That was my final thing. I'm making peace with that.
Fair.
Let me see. Let me see. One thing that I can leave with, right? Okay. Since stories is my thing, I'll go with that. Okay. Uh, I'll reiterate here. When you write stories, make sure they come from a place of honesty. Make sure that they are genuine, and that when you're writing uh, this story, when you're writing these characters, you aren't lying to yourself or to the audience, because the audience will catch on. They'll know when you're not being genuine with them. Um, it's difficult to do so, but place yourself in a position of vulnerability with your characters and the themes and the world that you're trying to create. Um, it's a difficult ask, especially for new writers, because new writers don't like conflict, but conflict is where people grow the most, and that's where most of the moral lessons come from, right? Is a place of conflict. Every story needs a villain. Um, and your villains, your antagonists, are the people that teach you the most about whatever you're trying to show. Um, to tag to that, have difficult conversations with your friends and families about the topics you're exploring. It's it's important to have a sounding board, um, that you can kind of go to and check up, like, hey, this is the topic I want to talk about. This is the theme that I want to explore. Do you think it's a good theme to kind of push forward with? And if you're working with a team, check up with them as well. Like, hey, this is the story. Does it work with, say, the game design? Does it work with the way the game has been positioned in the market? Um, and when you work with multiple fields, right, your way of expressing your story kind of changes. And finally, always ask why. Like, why are you doing this? I think Nick mentioned this. Like, asking the questions why is very important when you're um, pursuing anything creative, right? Because art has a very um, ingrained kind of feature where it can really get into the audience's minds. So make sure that the messages that you are pursuing and the messages that you're trying to say have been vetted by yourself and your team, and ask why. That's it.
And I think those
I
are
want
some
to
great
compliment
points.
your what you just said. And for those that are still uh, trying to reach to a huge job at a triple A studio, um, just remember keep your goals humble, your steps sincere, and always the passion burning.
Those are
Your adventure is not just yours; it's for the players eager to escape into your worlds. And thank you.
those are some really heavy and important words, I think, that I really loved hearing, to be honest. They were great to hear. I really like what you guys have talked about today. I think there's a lot to take out of this. I just saw his message. Some martial art tips
Martial
there,
arts,
yeah.
so yeah. In the background, we kind of practice martial arts.
That's actually what the company is.
Yeah,
You
we're
guys,
just.
yeah, game developers is a front. It's a front for
Oh
your
yeah,
guys'
oh yeah,
job.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's actually really funny. We had a talk with someone the other day, me and Jade, one of the other execs, and they thought our club was called the Fight Club. That was a very interesting
Fight
one.
Club?
The Fight, yes. It was
Yeah,
either Fight or Bike Club. I don't remember, but it was quite funny to
that's
hear
a
that.
movie. Fight
Yeah.
Club.
And I loved it because I'm like, yeah, we are the Fight Club. We have fights every night. I like playing around with that quite a lot. It's never a bad thing. It's more funny to hear that like just the different ways people understand what I say and how I pronounce things. So it's really cool though and funny. Yeah, but yes, thank you guys so much for coming in, taking time out of I'm sure your busy day to have a chat with us, and planning for today. I'm sure it was a lot. And I definitely will. I'll put all you guys. Just send me all your links, and I can put everything up there. Whatever you want to be shown up there, just throw it up, and that works too. Again, thank you guys. It does take a lot of time for these, and I don't think a lot of people fully understand the process of hopping on. I think I've talked about this before. Jumping onto a talk night that's not only being presented live, but also being recorded for YouTube to stay on there forever. Um, I do think that's takes a lot of initiative and confidence in itself. So thank you guys so much for coming in and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you so much for having us. It was really
Thank
a
you.
joy. It was a joy talking to you and getting to talk to everyone who attended. Thank you for having us.
Yes, and yes, thank you guys for coming. Um, and I hope you guys all have a great day, and I hope everyone that's attending right now also has a great day. Um, and yeah, we will see you guys later. Goodbye.